Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thank you for taking a moment to maneuver around the screen and click the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you can keep up with what we're doing. And all of a sudden, all sorts of new people will flood to our channel because you took the time to do that. I don't think that'll happen, but anyway, thanks for doing that anyway. Appreciate it.
I am always waiting with bated breath to see what it is that Todd's going to say about that like button each week. So thank you for doing that. Absolutely. If you're new to this channel each week, Todd and I take a moment out of our busy weeks to just have a conversation about the upcoming weekend's lectionary readings from the Gospels. Our goal is to talk about those readings in the context of love and inclusion and social justice. And our hope is that our talk will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something we might say as we go back and forth with each other would inspire you along with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what are we looking at this week?
So we are continuing our journey in Mark, and we are in chapter 10. Just a few verses, verses 46 to 52, a story of Jesus interacting with Bartimaeus, who can't see, and he asked Jesus to receive his sight.
Yeah, so right away, I once again want to critique just a little. There's a lot of good stuff in this, but I also want to critique again just the way that Mark's gospel tends, and all the gospels really tend to use ableist metaphors. Like this week, we're talking about blindness, and we're using blindness negatively. Um, and so I just want to at least verbalize that, just name that. There's not much we can do with it. The story is what the story is, and it was written for the time in which it was written. But it's not as bad as some stories, where Jesus calls the Pharisees the blind leading the blind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's a
Mm-hmm.
where it's an actual slur. But once again, it's using very real special needs that people have to it's using those as a commodity to teach a gospel lesson. And the lesson's a good lesson, but I wish we weren't using Bartimaeus to do it. But anyway, there's some good stuff here that we can
Mm-hmm.
glean from it. There's lots of comparisons here. Weeks ago, Todd, we talked about, I don't know if you remember this, and we never got back to it. The lectionary didn't bring us back to it. But we talked about Jesus walking on the water and how that set us up. Like there were
Yes.
two crossings and there
Mm-hmm.
were stories in between, and this was a sandwich. And the way that it was all orchestrated was to teach an overall arch of a lesson as
Right.
well.
Right.
The same is true in Mark chapter 10. This is the third story in three. The first one was the rich man, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, and the
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus said, "Sell everything you have and give it to the poor," and he walks away
Mm-hmm.
sad because he had great present. Last week, the second story is what we covered last week, and that's where James and John are asking to be left and the right. And this story is the third in that series and uses the same language to contrast Bartimaeus with both the rich man first and then with James and John and his disciples second. So I'll throw that out there too as we're starting. That'll give
Mm-hmm.
us maybe some fodder.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any compare? Let's compare him to the rich man first. Do you see anything?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at huge economic contrast between the two right off the bat. Um,
Two different,
yeah.
yep, two different social locations, economic locations. Something else I didn't know, and maybe you already knew this, and so I'm going to feel kind of ignorant.
I'm going to
But
act like I knew it either way, just so I can make you feel ignorant.
so Bartimaeus means son of Timaeus, right? And Timaeus,
Mm-hmm.
the word in Aramaic means unclean. So son of someone who's unclean.
Hmm.
So to
I didn't
contrast,
actually know that.
okay, well, it makes me feel better because I didn't know it either until this week. But the contrast too is in with an earlier story with Mark where you had the woman with the issue of blood and the synagogue ruler,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about how there was that kind of social location tension between the two,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how, and anyways, it was where Jesus was making a preferential option for those on the outside rather than those that were already privileged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the
It,
same type of contrast here because you have two radically different economic social locations with the blind beggar Bartimaeus and the rich man, and the responses are very. I want to talk about this more at the close of tonight, but the responses are pretty stark. I think where the rich man goes away sad because he has so much. Bartimaeus finally gets through the crowd. Oh, his voice travels through the crowd, reaches Jesus's ear. They're trying to tell him to shut up. And when Jesus says, send for him, and they tell him, Bartimaeus, come, the master wants to see you, he chucks everything. I mean, he throws his
yeah.
cloak away. He's got to get to Jesus. And if we
Yeah.
understand the cloak, what cloaks were used for by beggars back, that's what they collected their money in, right?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
what you
that
threw
makes sense.
coins into, right? So he's
Yeah.
throwing away his livelihood, or he's throwing away what little he has. He has no regard. Where the other guy had so much,
Hmm.
you know. Anyway, what do you think of that?
Love it.
There's
I mean, I
something
think,
there. There's something there to unpack.
yeah, that is just, sorry, can you hear my dog barking? Sorry about
But
that.
it's okay.
Apologize about that. Um,
Your dog wanted to join the conversation too.
apparently. Um, yeah, I think you have, this is exactly, you are seeing the absolute contrast between how Jesus is being received by those in privilege and power and wealth versus those who have been shut out by the economic, political, and religious system. You are seeing these are I mean, I think these are symbols, if not stereotypes, of what are who's responding to Jesus versus who is not. Uh, and um, and then in the middle, you have in the middle story of the two disciples that we talked about last week, James and John. You have two people who are seeing what Jesus is doing and wanting to follow Jesus, but still wanting to accomplish it in the way of power and privilege. Even though they're still thinking about, okay, we're going to do things in a new way, but we want to be in in the new hierarchy. And when then you come to Bartimaeus and he says, I could care less about a hierarchy. Just get me close to
Jesus
this
me.
man.
Yeah.
I need to be close to Jesus. I need the help that Jesus can offer, and and so it's just that kind of that shift. You're just shifting from one side to the other.
Bartimaeus is the first one too in the Gospel of Mark to name Jesus as the Son of David, which I
Hmm.
thought was interesting because that held for those under the thumb of the Roman Empire, that held kind of a liberation type flavor,
Yeah. Hmm.
back then to call Jesus the son of David. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the Messiah title, but it's definitely
It's a little
a
bit
restoration.
treasonous.
Yeah, it's a restoration, it's a renewal.
Hmm.
So the rich dude, he goes away sad because he has so many possessions. It says it made me think of the more we have, the tighter we hold on to it.
Hmm.
I mean, and maybe you've seen this too in your own. Some of the most generous people that I know of, and I don't want to say that I do know some wealthy people that are also generous to a degree,
Hmm.
right? But some of the most generous people I know of don't have two pennies to rub together.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? It's like the less we have, the more we're willing to share to make sure what little I have like the kid with the loaves and the fish. Did he really think that was gonna make much of a dent in the need for, all he had was one, but he was
Yeah.
willing to offer it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people that have precious little, you see such generosity because they've not been infected by the hoarding bug yet.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that
I and then and it seems, but then it seems like we can even. But I've also observed how quickly even people even in lower, especially folks who are uh, without homes, who are living on the streets, who there there becomes this hoarding within what they carry in their
that's
backpacks,
true.
or
That's true.
and it that there's still this it's just amazing how steeped into our culture. I wanted to use the word seeped. I know either way. It's so ingrained in us at all levels now that we got to fight for and hold on to our stuff, whatever it is. It's so, and yet I think what you would say with those who are living in their cars or people who are living on the streets is I would see them in that moment if they had the chance to, if they knew the stories of Jesus, and all of a sudden Jesus shows up on the streets of where I used to live in the city of LA in these homeless encampments, and Jesus showed up. They'd leave their shopping cart, they'd leave their tent, they'd leave that stuff behind in a heartbeat, because they knew whatever they were leaving behind was so far inferior to what Jesus would offer them, and what the life they could have, because Jesus was offering something of much more significance. And I'm not talking about the eternal life highfalutin stuff, but he was actually calling them into a movement to find stability, to create community of sharing and mutuality, and he was inviting them into that, and they at a place where they wouldn't have to grasp and hold on to things anymore.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience this week, and you might laugh at me. It's kind of a silly experience, but out by my wood pile on the back of my house, there was this weed growing up. And I don't know what these things are, but I yanked up the weed, threw it away. But in so doing, it's the fall. So all of the seeds or whatever, they're like little two-pronged seeds.
Uh,
And dude, they were all over me just from pulling up that weed. I mean, my shirt was covered with these things and their seeds and how it propagates. And I thought, man, that weed really wants to live. I mean, or at least to live on or to
right.
propagate, right? That it only takes one of those seeds to produce another plant, and yet how many of them does that plant produce? That
Yeah.
what nature really teaches us is abundance, that there's
Mm,
more than what we need to
mm,
survive around us, right?
mm. There
And
is.
yet we we have created through, and I shouldn't say we, because for many of us it's been created for us by those in positions of power and influence that we'll never have any say in. But economically, there is such a scarcity that is
Mm,
created that leads us, instead of where Jesus said, "Hey, there's enough for everyone. Just share with each other and we're going to get through this together, through this life together," where we create such scarcity in our economy that everyone's like, I don't know where the next thing's going to come from, so I'm going to hold on really tight to what I have, and I'm going to hoard it, and if I share, I won't have enough for me. And there's like these two different worldviews vying, and I don't want to say they're just worldviews, because scarcity isn't just a way of looking at the world that isn't true. it's it is true. It's just a non-naturally occurring scarcity. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah, it's
scarcity that we've
created
created.
for in order for some people to succeed more than others.
It's to get us off our butts and go out there and work so that those
Yeah,
who we work for can make a profit so they get, you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
all tied into the system, right? But
right.
it was shocking to me that here's this little weed I was trying to throw away. And man, I cannot tell you how covered I was by all these seeds. They're like
Yeah.
little two-pronged seeds and they were stuck everywhere. And I was like, and it took forever to get them off. I mean, they were everywhere. And I thought, man, I mean, how bad does this sucker want to, give off an offspring? You know, you know, there's way more seeds than what's necessary. There is an unnecessary amount of seeds that this thing produces, right? You don't need this many. Anyway, I just thought there's such a lesson of abundance, and yet we miss that because we live in such a system of artificially created scarcity.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
again, that's the dude. The rich young ruler was, or the rich man was, in Mark 10. He had bought into that narrative of scarcity.
Well, and he had won. He had won in the game
Yeah,
of. He had abundance within the scarcity game. He had won, and so for Jesus to ask him to 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 give up the game he was playing and play in the real world of abundance, this he
that's
had no
scary.
interest. That's scary when he had already succeeded in another game, and
Right. And here's
yeah,
Bartimaeus, who has just precious little. I don't know if there were a few coins in his cloak, and I don't know whether the cloak was used for his livelihood or not. But I do know what the cloak was used for sure, and that was to just keep warm at night. Like
yeah,
that's his sole possession is his cloak, and
yeah.
he just carelessly, just careless abandon, throws it aside, because he's so excited to
And again,
answer.
somebody else who was not looking for Jesus to be of any help would have seen that cloak be thrown aside and probably would have ran and grabbed it, and
Right. Yeah.
Bartimaeus lost his cloak.
Right. Another beggar would be like, "Oh, that looks
Right.
warm.
Thank you. And but
Merry Christmas to
Bartimaeus
me."
Bartimaeus had a sense of what really mattered, and he went for it. And he was willing to give up even that is really his only possession, whatever that entailed.
Ched Myers in his book "Binding the Strong Man: A Political Reading of Mark's Gospel" on page 282. I read that this week. He writes, "The poor join in the final assault on the dominant ideological order, and the rich have walked away downcast. The first become last, and the last become first." That's what we're seeing in this first contrast. You mentioned James and John a minute ago. I find it fascinating that it's the same question. You know what I mean? That Jesus asked, like it's word for word the same question in Mark 10. You can't miss this comparison that the author of Mark is trying to make. The one between the rich man and Bartimaeus, fine. But this one is so blatant. Jesus asks James and John, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Hmm.
And they say, "We want to sit to the left and right." He asks the same exact question to Bartimaeus. "What do you want me to do for you?" I mean, there's this
Hmm.
there's this comparison that you can't miss in this story. "What do you
Hmm.
want me to do for you?" And
Yeah.
he says, "I just want to see."
Yep.
And
Yep.
again, it's using an ableist metaphor. I get it, but there's something here to this.
But there's this is the and here's the thing is if you get away you if you can set aside this is we're taking advantage of a man story who's didn't have a sight, and so we're using that metaphor again as it's been used a number of times. But in a sense, we all of us have shortcomings, all of us have failures, all of us have limitations. That is part of being the human story, and 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 what And what James and John had the opportunity to stay in their moment with Jesus is give us, they could have asked for other things too.
They could have
They could
asked for
have
deeper understanding.
they could have asked for, they were known as sons of thunder because they apparently had tempers like crazy. They could have said, release us from this rage, whatever caused, whatever it was from our parents, or from whatever happened to us growing up that put this rage within us. Take away this rage, replace it with a peace and a calm. Give us, get there's there there is the economy of Jesus that they could have tapped into at that moment. What can I do for you? And they could have tapped into that economy. Bartimaeus tapped into the economy of Jesus. He tapped into the basic healing work of Jesus that would allow him then to be a minister in a way that he felt he could be, as a result of that. James and John had that opportunity, and instead they sought the the rich young ruler's modus operandi, his game of choice.
Mm. I like that they could have tapped into that economy and chose not to, and Bartimaeus did. What I couldn't help but think about this week as I was writing this week's blog entry was how so many involved in Christianity right now, specifically Christian nationalism, that movement that's on the rise again. They're vying once again to sit on the left and the right.
Mm.
Whoever's in power, sitting on the left and the right. And what a rebuke Bartimaeus is,
Hmm.
because Bartimaeus didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
Bartimaeus just wanted deeper understanding. And man, if Christians would say, rather than wanting to sit on the left and the right, we just want to understand what it's like to be a woman in today's society who doesn't have bodily autonomy or health care, or we want to understand what it's like to be an immigrant who has left all to find safety and a better life and to risk everything for that. We want to understand what it's like to be in a body that doesn't feel like it fits, and to be a trans kid that's wrestling with who they are when it's in contrast with what they were assigned to be, or what it's like to go through this life in our society as part of a race or culture that is less privileged than others, or to go through society as gay or lesbian or bisexual. You know what I mean? If Christians would just seek deeper understanding, to understand from the experience, listen, it's really about listening to the experiences of others who experience life differently, wanting to understand that rather than wanting to sit on the left and the right so that they can enforce the way they see the world. What a
Mm.
contrast for me this week. And
Mm.
maybe I'm just forcing that on the story, but that's what this story said to me this week. Is here's Bartimaeus saying, I just want to see. And in the story, that's metaphorical for having a deeper understanding, deeper perception, deeper wisdom, right? To have the blindness taken away.
Mm.
Well, James and John, Jesus' own disciples, and it wasn't just James and John, because when the other disciples found out James and John had beat them to the question, they were upset that they didn't get to ask it. You know what I mean? They were upset
Yeah.
that they weren't upset that James and John asked it. They were upset that James and John asked it first.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So there's this contrast between the disciples even and Bartimaeus. Uh, you know, and I also think of, and we've talked about this before, how there's this theory out there that the Gospel of Mark was written by women in the early
Mm-hmm.
Jesus movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this was once again contrasting those male disciples and their competition with each other to be first, with Bartimaeus who says, I just want a broader perception of the world around me.
Hmm.
You know, it gives me a lot to ponder, a lot to think about this week, especially we are just days away. I mean, early voting, I know it's already opened in so many other places, but here in
Yeah.
West Virginia, it opens tomorrow. We are
Yeah.
just days away from another election. And the way Christians have acted, and there are exceptions. I can think of some exceptions, but to a large degree, the way that certain sectors of Christianity, is probably the best way to say it, certain sectors of Christianity have acted seems more like James and John than Bartimaeus in this story.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm reflecting on uh, something from my experience, but I'm not sure if I can share it in this context now or not. So it may have to happen later on. I'm not sure, but it's
That's all
but
right.
this is but I'm man, I'm tracking with you so much on this. This we are. I'll just share it. I've I discovered something about my state a while back, and it's that they have well, we have a notorious prison that's actually known quite well around the country. It's called Angola Prison. It's the maximum security state prison for Louisiana, and every year they have um, a prison rodeo um, where inmates get the opportunity to participate in rodeo activities for cash prizes. And at the same time, they also get to um, those who uh, work in the different craft and woodworking parts of the prison get the opportunity to sell their wares at adjacent to the rodeo. And so it is an economic opportunity for the prisoners to earn some income from the people who come to watch the rodeo um, and um, and shop with the crafts. Um, the interesting dynamic of it is that there's a there's a there's a separation and a diminishment
Mm, mm.
of those who are doing the rodeo. Um,
Those that are doing the crafts,
no, the
or just the general prison population at large.
the general from the spectators who come in from outside and the people and then the prisoners who are doing the sport. There's it's it's a spectacle of the those who are, I guess, who have won, and I guess one being we haven't been incarcerated, and those who've been forced to do time for whatever reason, and there is a um, in different ways in how the programming is done. There are ways of diminishing the
The
population
prisoners.
at the prison, and I guess I guess I just want to see a different economy.
Hmm.
I understand the need for a justice system.
Yeah, I
I
wish we had one of
know
those.
I know we have a justice system that's corrupted and is not exercised fairly. Um, but I know to whatever degree it is exercised fairly, it should not be used to diminish people. And um, anyway, and I don't have this all together in my head. I'm still reflecting on the events of the weekend. But anyway,
Did you go to the rodeo?
I did. I did because I wanted to experience it for myself. I heard about it. I wanted to see it firsthand to really get a sense of what it was about. Because I read about it and I couldn't believe it was a real thing, and so I wanted to see what it was about, and it was
And it made you a
very
little
interesting.
uncomfortable. It
It did.
sounds like.
Hmm. So um, anyway, sorry for I'll probably edit
No,
this out of
no.
the
Part of that is
show.
crossing those lines that we've created of difference, and whether it be with prisoners or people that are just different from us. Again, it's that desire to see the world. And I know the metaphor, but it's a desire to see the world from a different person's experiences than my own.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what I see in the Bartimaeus, this story this week is in what ways it makes me ask, in what ways am I not seeing things as they are?
Hmm.
In what ways am I not understanding? In what ways am I not perceiving? Where is my perception of the world blinkered? And and to make that my prayer, help me see not through, especially in my social location and yours too, Todd. It, help us not to see the world through the lens of our privilege, as hard as that is.
Hmm.
Help us to see the world as it is for others who aren't like me in areas of my in differences of my life that our society has chosen to privilege. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of that comes through relationship, you know. I mean, you have to enter into relationship with people who are different from you in order to start being exposed to what the world's like different from you. I remember my first, it's a kinship camp meeting, but for those who don't know what that is, it was my first LGBTQ Christian kind of convention event that I ever attended. And it was this safe space where everybody could just be themselves. And I had witnessed all week long what life was like for them to let their guard down. They knew they were safe with each other as this little community that was meeting together for this convention. They were at a Methodist camp, I think. I don't know what denomination it was, but they had rented the camp for a week. And people would, you know, hand in hand and hugging on each other and arm in arm or arm around someone. And you could see spouses. I'm thinking of a lesbian couple that dear friends with that you know, just saw the way that they related to each other in that safe environment and their kids. And then Thursday night, it was the 4th of July that year. And so we were going to go out to some event in public, um, off site of where the convention was being. We were going to all travel to this 4th of July celebration event. And I saw such a stark contrast and how everyone related to each other and the world around them on that night when they had to have their guard up out, and this was in Georgia,
Hmm.
out in the South. They had
Mm-hmm.
to have their guard up, and versus how they had been acting all week,
Mm-hmm.
in this safe environment. And that was it was a light bulb moment where I was like, wow, life is very different
Mm-hmm.
for them than it is for me. I can
Mm-hmm.
navigate that transition and there's no change for me. I don't have
Right.
any fear that makes me have to present differently or
Yep.
act differently, um, or sell differently. And yet they did. And that's one of those moments where you enter in a relationship and all of a sudden it's one of those Bartimaeus moments where it's like, I just want to, it's just where you're given a deeper understanding, a deeper vision. You're able to see something you didn't see before. And I
Mm-hmm.
still come back to that. If Christians were praying for that right now, working for that, choosing that, if that's what we were leaning towards rather than to sit on the left and the right, what a different, what a different impact we would have on the world.
Yeah.
We'd do less harm.
Yeah.
But it's the same for you. You went to that rodeo and all of a sudden you saw things through the perspective of what it's like to be lessened or
Mm-hmm.
diminished, you know. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking
It's
about.
and it's yeah. That's yeah. It's I think this is a great point of what would you ask Jesus for if you had the chance to ask Jesus for something and Jesus says, "What can I do for you?"
Mm.
And what would you say in that moment? What would you hope that Jesus could give you in that moment? And I think so many of us would jump for the power. So many of us would jump for the wealth. So many of us would jump to win the game, and we would miss the
Yeah, I'll
opportunity
grant you
that
one wish.
yeah,
Anything,
it's
one
it's like
wish.
it's like Santa Claus. Jesus comes as Santa Claus, and yet if he had shown up at that rodeo, and I don't blame in that situation, I don't blame a prisoner for saying I want my freedom, because they know what freedom means. When somebody's lost everything, and then you give them the gift that gives everything back, and in Bartimaeus' case in the story, for the people telling the story, for them giving him his sight back meant total like total freedom. That's how they saw it at that time. I that's that's the thing, is what is it that would lead us to a place of being free from the things that bind us to the old order of things? What is the thing that binds us to a world of scarcity? What is it that binds us to to treat
You
people
want the power.
differently and want the power, instead of being able to free to engage with people and to love people and to serve and work with people no matter who they are, where they're from. um yeah, it's that that's the thing, is, man. And I think if we lived by that question, if we were just to walk, and that was like our mantras, we spent time seeking to center ourselves or find ourselves, be present in our daily lives, to let that question resonate with us.
What do
What
you
can
want me
I
to do
do
for
for
you?
you?
Yeah.
What can I do for you? What what is the Jesus experience that you need? And I think that all of us, no matter where we are in relation to the Jesus story, would benefit from meditating on that question.
Yeah, it's a good diagnostic. What would your answer to that question be?
Yeah.
That's a good diagnostic.
What else
All
did
right,
you have
man.
with this?
That's it. I think that's all I've got. Those are my thoughts this week.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about what's going on with Renewed Heart Ministries, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on with me.
All right. Well, as we say every week, renewedheartministries.com. There is a non Renewed Heart Ministries is a ministry dedicated to helping people find the intersection of their faith and engagement with whatever various justice or social justice uh, action that they're passionate about. We have a ton of resources on our website. They're all free. You can check us out there. My book's available on Amazon. You can find that there under Herb Montgomery, Fighting Jesus. Fundamentalist preacher discovers the unexpectedly discovers the social, political, and economic teachings of the Gospels. Almost forgot the tagline there. But you can find that on his Amazon and Audible and all those places. But yeah, just check out Renewed Heart Ministries. We're still plugging right along, producing stuff every week. If you haven't followed us on social media, do it there too. We post something almost every day, and you can sign up for free on our website to get our newsletter and our emails each week. And also, let me just say thank you. Everything there, again, as I said, is free, and the reason we're able to do that is because of our supporters. So I want to give a special shout out and thank you to all of those who are supporting the work of Renewed Heart Ministries. And if any of you out there would like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries work, you can do so very simply by just going to renewedheartministries.com and in the top right, clicking donate. What I'm excited about this week is to hear what you have to share for us, Todd.
Thank you, Herb. I am uh, in the process of pursuing my degree in mental health counseling. Have about 2 years to go on that before I can become a licensed counselor. But what I'm going to be doing in the meantime is learning how to be a counselor by taking some time to do coaching out of my experience from my years of pastoral experience and training that I've done there. And so I've just started a website to do online I'm serious, not counseling, online coaching and consulting. It's TL, I'm sorry, TJLCC.com, TJLCC.com. And I am just, if you're somebody who has been battling with issues related to spiritual, religious trauma, if you're a clergy person who is wrestling with who you are in relation to your faith tradition and how you continue to carry out your calling as a clergy person, if you're an LGBTQ plus person and are asking questions about your identity and how that relates to maybe your faith, um, those are areas that I've spent time coaching other people on the last number of years as a pastor, and that's something that I would like to be able to help you with if that's something that you would like help with. So please feel free to reach out to me if I can help you with that, and let your friends know as well. And I appreciate that. So
That's
yeah, so that's what's
exciting,
happening
Todd.
with me.
That's great.
And yeah, so it's hopefully a gift that can be a benefit to some people out there who might be watching.
Excellent. 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 All right. So check out Todd's website. Check out my website, Renewed Heart Ministries. And hopefully we'll see you back here next week.
All right, everybody have a
Same,
good week.
same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Oh, since you said Bat Time Bat Channel, I have a joke. We'll sign off with a joke.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, what do you call it when Batman misses church?
I don't know.
A Christian Bale. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.